Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde and Shooter Hunt bringing you the latest episode of Coffee and Curveballs. I'm on the West Coast with you now, Shooter. As you're watching this, we're all both in the midst of covering the Boris Classic as well as other things going on in California. So that's why you don't see the usual North Carolina headquarters backdrop behind me. Got a little Fairfield Inn action going on, but feels good to be back out on the Best Coast, Shooter.
Oh, I can't wait to get down there. We got some rain right now here up in Portland, so get down to that sunshine where I know the Boris staff will have a lot of sunshine for me.
I'm sure they will. And I'm sure they'll be sure to bring up last year of you getting roasted on that first day. I already got my burn out of the way. First day at NHSI snuck up on me pretty good. But speaking of which, the NHSI is done, so I'm catching my breath a little bit. And as we roll right into the next one, and I tell you what, man, I know you were watching from afar. A lot of people are following along, but that was one heck of a tournament to watch. I mean, it's always good. I've loved it since we started it when I was back at Baseball America. But this year was unbelievable between the level of talent that was there, plus the competition, and then just the games that we had. Matt Blood, 18U director who runs the NHSI now at USA Baseball, just tweeted out a little bit ago. I think it was like of the 32 games, 11 were decided by one run and 5 went into extra innings. So It was a high level of drama in Cary, North Carolina.
That was what I noticed that from afar, just following along with you, and then on Game Changer, obviously watching the Calvary-Olu game very closely, but we'll get to that in a minute. But really those close games, because sometimes after those first couple days where you had the high-end draft guy, you get into the third and fourth starter for most teams in the country. You're not dealing with a big-time arm, but these guys held their own.
Yeah, they absolutely did. It was a lot of fun, and I think part of that was Green Hope High School from North Carolina, just a mile or two away from the USA Baseball Training Complex. They were the de facto host school this year, because to be sanctioned, you got to have a North Carolina school since it's in the state of North Carolina. So Green Hope was the team this year with Jordan Adams, the outfielder, committed to UNC, two-sport star. Liam Norris, 2020 left-hander, who's been up to 93, spins a breaking ball. They were the team in the event. And North Carolina schools historically in the NHSI have not performed very well, and Green Hope blew them all out of the water. They advanced to the finals, only to lose to Orange Lutheran, but it was a Loyola-esque run in the NHSI for Green Hope. They went extra innings against John Curtis, won on a walk-off.
Oh, my boys.
Yeah, the Cajuns, they didn't fare so well in that one, but they played well, and throughout the tournament, it was a fun game to watch. But Liam Norris with the walk-off single in the 11th inning.
He hits too.
Yeah, he does. He does swing it a little bit. But really, the big thing was they had Walton High School in the first round and knocked out Luke Barnicki and Walton. Walton's a perennial power in the state of Georgia. You got Barnicki on the mound, who's a prospect, but he struggled on that day. But the guy that really shined was obviously Jordan Adams. I mean, the difference between him from February 28th when I saw him on opening day for North Carolina and what I saw last week is light years. I mean, the athleticism is taking over. The reps are coming in the at bats. I saw him saw 4 games. I sat on Green Hope pretty much for Jordan Adams at bats for 4 games. I saw 1 bad swing in 4 games. Just 1.
Wow.
The rest of them, I mean, it's unbelievable just the change that he has made in that short amount of time, the athleticism, watching it take over.
Yeah, and if you talk about guys like that who play other sports, this is why the pro scouts get paid like they do, because you take that small sample size, you put it over 400 at-bats in the GCL or the AZL, where they're constantly getting that stuff in professional baseball, that progression comes a little bit quicker. And look, it took Jordan Adams a month for you to start seeing significant growth.
Yeah. I mean, he's an 80 runner. He has a good swing. It's a smooth swing. Like I said, he only took 1 bad actual hack. And he was facing some good arms. I mean, it wasn't like he was, facing some low-level competition. This is the NHSI. Like, even if he is, facing the 2, 3, or 4 guy for some of these teams, we're still talking about, for the most part, Division I arms that he's facing. If anybody... No, I don't think anybody helped themselves this week more than Jordan Adams. But
Wow.
Green Hope, obviously, finished second place. So we got to give some love to the Orange Lutheran Lancers, back-to-back NHSI champions. We'll see them again this week in the Boris Classic. But the Lancers proving me a prophet.
Well done, Rody. Well done. It was a great game against Calvary. I was following it the whole way. But you know what? Olu was just stacked. And you said it right from the start. With the amount of pitching that they had, you got to see Christian Rodriguez of 2020, who had a great game against Calvary. So, like, just having that deep pitching staff and the style of baseball they play, they got a great coaching staff, great program. So, I mean, and then right at the top, Cole Wynn sets the everything for them. He hits, he pitches, he does it all.
Yeah, he really set the tone for them with that first round appearance, and he certainly helped himself this week. Not tremendous, not like a Jordan Adams, because he's been doing this all season. What we saw out of him in the first round is what is the reports that we've been getting from our guy Les Lukacs in Southern California, and that he's absolutely dominating. Started out 92 to 94, kind of settled into that 90 to 93 range. The last pitch he threw of his outing in the sixth inning was 93, so he's holding that velo. And last summer, we saw a slider out of him, and I'm pretty sure, Shooter, that's what you saw from him as an underclassman. But that's not his breaking ball anymore.
Yeah, you said it was more of a 12-6, and just watching some of the video, it looks more of that curveball action. I don't know if something happened when he got out to Southern California where he said, hey, I think I could spin this breaking ball, or somebody showed it to him. What do you think of it?
It's a tremendous pitch. I mean, it shows the makings of being at least an above-average pitch down the road. It's 12-6, good shape, it's got the spin, the depth. It gets a little loopy at times, but, I mean, he's probably only been throwing it for 2 or 3 months, so it's understandable that it's not consistent there. I mean, even if he had been throwing it for 2 years, it'd be understandable if it wasn't consistent. But it's coming for him, and it's a really good pitch. So you put, a future plus fastball with the future plus breaking ball. The slider, he showed it in the game, but it was more of a darting slider. It didn't have the big break that I saw out of him at area codes, but he used it, got some swings and misses out of it. Didn't have the same feel for it as the curveball. But really, the only question now is, let's see the changeup. But we say that with a lot of high school guys because they don't really need it at this level. But then just his ability to pitch, he pounds the strike zone. I knew it was a dominant outing, but I went back and looked at it because I was really curious as to like the outs that he got. And he struck out, I can't remember what it was, like 11 maybe, I think, or 10, something like that over the 6 innings. But there was only one ball that left the infield. And that was also the only air out that he had, and it was against the last batter he faced.
Interesting. So, that's impressive. I mean,
Yeah, so a lot of ground balls. And the only hit he gave up was a little dribbler that probably got maybe 10 to 15 feet from the home plate. And the only reason why it was a hit is because it was in no man's land. Like, it was a tough play. Like, they got the throw off, but it, like, pulled the first baseman. But you can't call it an error because it's a really tough play to make. So that was the hit. It wasn't even, like, a clean single, like, that reached the outfield. So just a truly, truly dominant outing from Cole Wynn. So looking forward to seeing what he does, this week at the Boris Classic.
Well, he's not going to be able to sleep on it because they got El Toro coming up on Tuesday. I don't think Tolman cares very much about Olu winning NHSI.
No doubt. So one more guy that was a standout at the NHSI that I'll mention was Matt Libator. And if you only saw the first 2 innings, you would think that he was kind of trending down a little bit based on him being the number 1 high school prospect. Number 1 on the PBR draft board currently. There's something to be said, obviously for Casey Mize's case of being number 1 at this point in the season. And I'm sure we'll, have a healthy discussion about that when we do an update at midseason. But he didn't look like the number 1 guy in the first 2 innings. But he didn't have the command. His stuff wasn't as sharp. But after that second inning, he found a groove and he dug in. And he put his team in a position to win. Innings 3 through 7 is where all of his strikeouts came. I think it was 10 strikeouts and he just from there he dominated 88 to 91, spinning the breaking ball, showing the changeup, still showing the feel for those pitches, just didn't have the quite the sharpness that we've seen out of him out of the past. So for me, even though it wasn't plus stuff, I loved the competitiveness from him in that he pitched well after pitching poorly in the first 2 innings and keeping his team in a position to win their game. So it was a really interesting outing to see from him.
And sometimes that can say even more about a kid like that, where he didn't have his best stuff early and he didn't just, hey, I need a reliever, get out of there. We saw the same thing on Royce Lewis last year at the Boris Classic, where he didn't get many hits in the first 3 games and then, boom, walk-off home run in his last at-bat of the last day, and nothing got him down. But I think for scouts, they probably wanted to see him have something like this on a big stage. Hey, a little adversity coming your way. Everything's not working today, and he was still able to get past it. So good for him. Kudos to him.
No doubt. So jump on PrepBaseballReport.com. Obviously, NHSI got 4 days of coverage there. Plenty of notes to go over, and we'll certainly have plenty to talk about those guys moving down the road as well. Not just the draft guys. I mean, there was obviously a lot of underclassmen. I saw a freshman throw a one-hitter, on the last day. So plenty more to come from the NHSI, but we've got the Boris Classic to dig into now, as well as other things around Southern California. But moving on topics here, it was a big week in Texas. Our guy Toby Bicknell, it sounds like he had a good one, man. Checking out Adam Kloffenstein versus Brandon Birdsell.
Yeah, Bick gave me a call all jacked up the next morning, and I'd already read his report on it. I was following along on Twitter because Kloffenstein, I had seen him a few weeks ago with Magnolia, where he was 88 to 92, and it was very athletic. So I just saw it, and it was one of those, if this velocity jumps, hey, we're talking first-round stuff easily here, because the command of the fastball is going to come, the ball explodes out of his hand, and he's just so athletic with the frame. It's, broad-shouldered, but more weight's going to get added on there. So Toby said touching 95 2 or 3 times, but mostly 92 to 94, said he featured that changeup early. Had a plan. First time around the lineup, going to the changeup. Second time around with the slider. Everything was working for him. But that velo jump, which I think we kind of expected as the season went on, big game, it's there. It's impressive to see out of him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to continue to follow him. As the spring develops, moving toward June, because like we've said so many times, this draft is really deep, especially with pitching, and guys are really starting, it seems like, to separate themselves or put themselves into the mix of, maybe might have been a second-tier guy that could make a jump, Kloffenstein being one of those guys that I think fits that category, and he's making that step that maybe some people expected or were hoping for. But obviously, Brandon Birdsell in that game as well, up to 95 himself. Did show the same command, that Kloffenstein did. And, certainly, even though he's also up to 95, still a difference between those guys. But, I mean, how often do we roll up to a game and there's both guys throwing 95? I mean, that's a good night if you're a scout.
It's tough to find that on a college weekend. 2 guys going on. That's SEC Friday night action right
and
there.
And by the way, Jordan Groshans was in the game.
And everything I got from Bick was Groshans looked like an absolute hitter. And just in the box, that's exactly what I had seen when I was down there. Even though he didn't have a great game for me, you can just see the balance at the plate and just the way the barrel gets through the zone. He's just going to be a guy, especially with so many pitchers in this year's draft, to see a high school hitter like that, the scouts are perking up.
I'm glad it's coming along for him, too, because he was definitely a guy that, right at the outset of last summer, turned him as stars. Watching his BP and watching him in games, seeing how balanced he was, I was like, this guy is a hitter. So glad to see that that bat is continuing to progress for him. But, Shooter, we, as our readers and our listeners and our watchers are viewing Coffee and Curveballs, you and I are actually at the field for the Boris Classic. So what are you looking forward to this week and hoping to see out of the event?
I just love the fact that for 4 days you're seeing the same team over and over again. So you get to know them. And one guy where, if you see him in a showcase one day, he may not have a great day, and then you don't see him again for a while. But for this, you see, okay, this swing works. He was 0 for 2 with a walk. I didn't see anything. The next day, he was 1 for 3, and you get to continuously follow them. I touched on Royce earlier, who didn't have a great week early on, but still stayed through and hit the home run. And I think that said, I mean, there's 30 plus scouts at almost every game at this event. So those guys get to see that over and over again, just kind of being able to feel the team camaraderie. We talked about Tolman, a guy who's an absolute gamer. So they're going up against Olu, Colwyn versus Eric Tolman. He's going to be ready to go. So you get to see him in that atmosphere where I want to beat this guy, and that's what it's all about.
Is there a particular player, regardless of class, that you're really looking forward to seeing, whether you'd seen him before and you want to see how he progress, or a guy that you've heard about and haven't seen yet?
The Notre Dame 2020 class obviously is something that I really want to see. Tyler Stromsborg is a USC commit on the mound. I haven't seen him on the mound, so I really want to catch him there. Lucas Gordon, left-handed pitcher, USC 2020. But Max Radzik, Olu, right-hander, a guy I really liked last year, who only got to see him throw 2 or 3 innings at it. So it'll be good to see him, and he also hits too. So what about you? Who are you looking for? Do we have to see Turang again?
I'm looking forward to seeing Turang again because, I saw him at the NHSI, and I would kind of go peek in on him, but I wouldn't bear down and make sure I was at every at-bat because I knew I was going to get another week with him in the Boris Classic, so I wanted to focus on some other guys at the NHSI. But it sounds like he started barreling some balls up, at the end of the NHSI and starting coming through, and I think that's been the question for him. Guys are questioning the impact of the bat. We all know he can defend. We all know he can run. We all know he has instincts and he has bloodlines. It just matters that bat, going to play. I think it's a little unfair the way that he's getting picked apart now because we've seen him since he was in 8th grade, and it's almost as if he's not the #1 pick that it's a disappointment, which we all know, in our heads that's ridiculous. But this guy can play, and I'm hoping that this week is going to be kind of that breakout week. He may have showed a hint of it at NHSI, hoping that it carries over. So certainly looking forward to seeing him. But I also want to see Harvard Westlake, and I know shockingly this is going to surprise you. I'm looking forward to seeing an underclassman, Sam Leboki. I want to see my guy. So see how he's spinning it and seeing how his progress has gone since I saw him a year ago.
Yeah, there's some big matchups right off the bat, and if you're watching this now, we will have a preview up, so be sure to go check that out. But Harvard Westlake gets right off Jump Street. They got a big game. So, I mean, every game in the Boris class is a big game, but we'll be enjoying that.
Be sure to jump on PrepBaseballReport.com. Follow all of our coverage from the Boris Classic. Next week's episode of Coffee and Curveballs, we'll be sure to talk about the Midwest Select in Indianapolis. We'll get to see some Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois prospects. But in the meantime, follow us along. He's Shooter Hunt on Twitter. I'm Nathan Rohde. This is Coffee and Curveballs. And until next time, we'll see you guys at the ballpark.